Good afternoon, Rotarians. Welcome to the December 12th meeting of the Rotary Club of Des Moines. I'm Kevin Kassir, your president, and thank you for that once again. I'd like to thank Dick Stauffer and John Lorenzen for serving as greeters today. Thank you, guys. This is one great Rotarian after another, don't you think, that signs up for greeters? So, we don't need any for next week, because it's the big Christmas holiday event. But starting January 9th, there's some openings, so jump on there. It's a great way to help out the club and meet all the Rotarians coming for lunch. So now we got a busy schedule today, by the way, I think there's like 75 that committed, so we normally have around 65, so big day today, so good to see everybody. I'm now gonna ask Bob Vedral to come up and share his moment of inspiration, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the four-way test, and then we'll have an opportunity to greet everybody and a special greeting to our guests as well. So, Bob.
Thank you, President Kevin. As we have entered the holiday season with all its celebrations, it is a time of cheer with family and friends. It is a time to reflect upon those who do not have what we are blessed to have in our lives. As Rotary members, we have contributed to make the lives of others in our community a little better. We all have the opportunity to give to those important organizations, some of which are represented within our club, that help others to take the next step of progress towards a greater self-worth and personal fulfillment. At this time of year, it is perhaps throughout the year to take a moment of self-reflection, to process what went well during the year in our lives, where we could have done better, and to define what we are committed to do, not only for ourselves, but others in the year before us. I'd like to share some quotes on reflection. Our power lies in our small daily choices, one after another, to create ripples of a life well lived. Molly Marty. Living in a way that reflects one's values is not just about what you do, it's about how you do things every day. The act of going within, finding our truth, and then sharing it helps us far more than we know. Kamel Ravikant. And lastly, by Deborah Day, wisdom comes from reflection. Let us all find our moment of reflection and take solace in the life we have been granted and in the life that evolves each day. And within our individual evolution, that we touch others' lives in a positive way and thus our own. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the four-way test.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Okay, and now, greet your fellow Rotarians.
Happy holidays. Good job, Bob.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy holidays. Happy holidays, John.
Happy holidays.
We have, as I said, we have several guests here today. So I will be introducing our guests, and I'd ask you to please stand when I mention your name, and then remain standing, and then we will acknowledge the group of you all at once. So first off is Brooke Axiotis, the daughter of Helen Miller. Sarah Buckley with EMC, a guest of Tanya Wenzel. Renee Davenport with the Des Moines Symphony, and she's a guest of Richard Early. Andrea Elliott with University of Northern Iowa, a guest of David Oman. Krista Gorshi with Principal, a guest of Susie Willems. And Travis Sheets with Guide 1, a guest of Chris Anderson. Welcome, everybody. So now we have Where in the World is Club 27, and this is another interesting one by Mark Snell. They were out and about, looks like Central and South America, and the top picture, he found a rotary sign that was in the old city, Panama. Old city of Panama. And then he and his wife Cindy were pictured at Port Manta in Ecuador after crossing the equator. So if you are heading out to a fun place, take us with you, and we'd love to share pictures of your trip. Now, did you know? And before I start asking you these Thanksgiving related questions, Thanksgiving's not that far in the rearview mirror, so I captured a few things. I just kind of share a little bit of, I don't know if you're aware of this history, but maybe it would be a good reminder if you were. But some presidential history of that. So George Washington was the first one to do a proclamation in 1789. And one of the wording says, "For the people of the United States, a day of public thanksgiving." Thomas Jefferson actually refused to do a proclamation because he thought there was an issue between church and state. Between 1846 and 1863, Sarah Josepha Hale was petitioning the Congress and the 5 presidents at that time, Taylor, Fillmore, Pierce, Buchanan, and Lincoln, to create actually a national holiday. And it was Lincoln in 1863, during those rough times of the Civil War, was the first to make it a holiday. And then back in Roosevelt years, he was changing the date, and then everybody was in uproar. So it was during that time in 1941 that they signed a bill, Congress signed a bill that said it was going to be the 4th Thursday of November, and that would make it the legal holiday on a permanent basis. So a little bit of history. So now my questions. How many turkeys were prepared at Thanksgiving in the United States? On Thanksgiving, how many turkeys do you think were prepared?
60 million.
Close. Good job, David. 46 million turkeys were carved over Thanksgiving. And what do you think the average calorie intake of a Thanksgiving meal?
43.75.
Pretty close, Ski. You're within the band. The average would have been about 3,800 calories. So, yeah, that 2 pieces of pumpkin and pecan pie that I had, I'm sure, pushed me over the average on that. Now we will have our Rotarians on the floor laughing, and with that, Ski Wooten.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. You don't think all Thanksgiving in England?
No.
Thursday. Okay.
It gets better.
Don't hold your breath. Anyway, how many people here in the room have ever done remodeling in their home? If you have, raise your hand.
Okay, pretty good number. It's a stressful, inexact process, and the best plans sometimes don't go like we had planned or envisioned. Now, how many people in the room who have remodeled their house have posted anything about it on social media? Please raise your hand. Oh, not too many hands. Okay, it would be indiscreet to mention any names, but one of our esteemed members did post something recently, which I thought the club might enjoy hearing about, and so here it goes. And I quote, "We're getting ever so closer to finishing up our walk-in shower. So far this weekend, we've installed 2 custom-cut marble end caps, stained and varnished shelving plus pre-marked installation locations, secured final pencil tile trimming for installation around the end caps, and this is, secured color-coordinated grout and caulk for the final trim-out base around the shower floor line and the end caps. Bought a new dryer as their 12-year-old Whirlpool died on its last load, and used the heck out of our way cool ceiling-mounted, and this is the part where it gets good, Bluetooth speaker with LED lights, 3 different mood-colored settings, of course, plus the ducted line to an external outlet for proper venting of humidity and other miscellaneous airborne elements from such a facility. We're getting so close. Tomorrow we measure for the glass shower door. Oh, the things we do for love." I won't mention any names, but if you posted this on social media, would you raise your hand? Cowboy Sean.
If it's on Facebook, it's fair game, buddy.
Okay, now I'd like to invite Heather Stuyvesant up. She is our Communications Committee Chair and will also be introducing our speaker today. And Heather's got some really cool things to share about what's going on in support of our strategic pillars and 3-year plan. So Heather.
Well, good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. It's a pleasure to speak with you today about an exciting new initiative to grow membership and to share a unique value proposition that makes the Rotary Club of Des Moines such a special place. I believe on the screen you will see the unique value proposition statement that was developed in collaboration with the membership and the communication committees. And as one of the largest Rotary clubs in Iowa, we are proud of what sets us apart. Our generous endowment fund that supports transformative local and global initiatives, unparalleled mentorship opportunities from Iowa's most influential executives and business leaders, the dynamic network that we foster through our weekly luncheons and our fun social events. And together, these create a vibrant community that inspires personal growth, impactful service, and professional development. In 2025, we will be launching a new Ambassadors Club to help amplify this message and bring in fresh faces who share the values and the commitment to service. Ambassadors will play a key role in spreading the word about our club by tapping into their networks. And to make this as easy as possible for everybody that joins the club, we will be equipping our ambassadors with tools and templates, including social media posts for LinkedIn and Facebook, ready to copy, paste, and post, and then email templates as well, so that you can invite potential members to experience the club and see the impact about the membership. Ambassadors will also engage in the club's posts by liking, commenting, and sharing these posts. These are small actions that will actually help us reach more people by working with social media algorithms, which can be difficult to work with at times. And through this initiative, we aim to grow not only our membership numbers, but diversity, strength of our network. And we believe that with our enthusiasm and participation, the Ambassadors Club can actually help us usher in a new wave of members who will carry forward the Rotary Club of Des Moines' legacy of leadership and service. So as we prepare for 2025, I encourage each of you to consider becoming an ambassador. It's pretty easy. And if you are interested in participating, just let me know or let Kitty know, and we will also be getting more information out as we get ready for our launch. Thank you so much again for considering becoming an ambassador, and I'm excited about the opportunity to work together to expand our reach, welcome new members, and continue to make this an even greater impact both globally and locally. And with that, I would like to introduce our speaker. So as we gather in the season of giving, it's only fitting that today's speaker is someone who knows how to make generosity shine all year round. Please join me in welcoming Jo Christine Miles, Director of Principal Community Relations and Principal Financial Group Foundation. Jo Christine leads a team that delivers incredible gifts to our community. Grants, volunteerism, sponsorships, and programs that light up the lives of people here in Des Moines and across the world. Before she took the reins at Principal in 2020, Jo Christine was making magic happen in philanthropy circles across New York, advising foundations and tackling big issues like equality, equity, health, and inclusion. But wait, there's more. She is also a former attorney. Whether she was guiding corporate restructuring or providing pro bono support for low-income women, Jo Christine has always found a way to bring hope and joy to those who need it most. Under her leadership, the Principal Foundation has been like Santa for our community, helping youth achieve their dreams, ensuring families feel secure, and making sure our neighborhoods are places where everyone can thrive. So grab a cup of holiday cheer, or coffee, or iced tea, and get ready to be inspired by Jo Christine's story of community impact and purpose-driven giving, proving to us what's possible when corporate values meet community needs. Please join me in giving a warm Rotarian and festive welcome to Jo Christine Miles.
Thank you. That was an amazing introduction. I hope I live up to it. For the record, I did not give her any of those words. So she was very gracious and generous, and I think that reflects the spirit of this club. Thank you all for having me, Kevin for welcoming me, Scott for recommending me, and all of you for showing up on a rather cold and dreary day. There we go. All right, so I will talk about my work at Principal, but when I was looking at the guidelines, looking at some other Rotary Club guidelines, and your national organization's website, it appeared to me that talking simply about the foundation and how you volunteer and how you give money away might not be that interesting to a group of folks who live that every day, and of course value that as evidenced by the fact that you're members of this club. So what I decided to do was tell a story that is a third about me, a third about my transition from a corporate legal career, and a third about what I do at Principal. Hopefully I don't bore you. Hopefully you find some inspiration nuggets or maybe humor in my reflections. And of course I'll be open to questions at the end. So as Heather stated, I was a corporate restructuring attorney. And before I dive into that, something that we were talking about at the table is where am I from? I've spent more than half of my life in New York City. But I consider myself an American through and through because I've literally lived coast to coast. I moved about every 2 years. I went to 4 different high schools in 2 different states and 1 other country, and I did not repeat a grade. So that gives you a sense of, I actually graduated early. So that gives you a sense of how much I've moved, but that also gives you a sense of how much of this country I've seen. I've lived in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, San Diego, California, here, and of course New York City, and a lot in between. So that's Jo Christine at the age of 9. She was living in San Diego at that time, and I declared that I would become a lawyer. Now everyone in my family, I had no one in my family who was a lawyer, didn't know any lawyers, but it seemed like the path that I should be on, right? Most of the folks in my family were educators or nurses or in business in some sense, some shape, form, or fashion. But me, I was gonna break the mold and go to law school. See my cool Timex that dates me. So I went to law school. First thing out of law school, I clerked for 2 years in the U.S. Bankruptcy Court in the Southern District of New York. Ultimately joined a firm in 2003, and in 2008 I was voted to become a partner. Now for those of you who are lawyers and who work in large private law firms, you're doing the math and you're saying to yourself, she made partner in 5 years. I was a beast. I didn't sleep much. It was pretty intense. And you would have never told me that I wouldn't practice law. I loved it. I was a corporate restructuring attorney, which I like to describe as being a love child between litigation and a threesome, between litigation, corporate bankruptcy law, otherwise known as Chapter 11, and then straight up corporate law, which is transactional, right? Looking at contracts, negotiating contracts, etc. To do well in a restructuring, one must find a way to bring all of the sections of a company's capital structure to the center. They have to coalesce around some idea on how this company would restructure. And my area of specialty was to represent the holder of what we call the fulcrum debt. That's the debt that they could buy at the cheapest price that was most likely to be converted into equity so they'd get control of this thing when it came out on the other side of restructuring. Alternatively, the fulcrum debt holder could force concessions from the company without putting them into a Chapter 11 and again come out on the other side controlling the company. Now, something happened to me while I was practicing. I had a strong pull to give back, which I did. I would do hundreds of pro bono hours each year. And I was also completely enthralled by what I got to learn about the way the corporate sector works through what I did. What you have here is a sampling of cases I worked on, and as you can see, they were from massively different sectors. So the United Airlines case, which was the largest airline case in the nation, still the largest airline case in history. Federal Mogul, that was all motor parts, a broadcasting company. So getting to see different sectors of corporate America doing wildly different things, but boiling down to some basic similarities in what we were trying to do, right? Maximize profit, whether that be for management and shareholders, or whether it be for the members of that quite complex capital structure that were participating in a very friendly, human-forward way in the restructuring of the company's operations. And then one day, I got married. I met a wonderful gentleman whose name is Everett. After 6 years of marriage, we had this little guy. His name is Ellis. He's now 13. And Ellis completely changed my life, right? So I went from being totally enthralled by my practice, loving every minute of practicing law, to trying to figure out how I can balance that with being the type of mother I wanted to be. And more importantly, something that hadn't crossed my mind prior to staring into his little pearly eyes, and that is, how can I leave the world a better place? Not just a richer place, right? And then came two. A few years later, I had Evan. So now I have Ellis and Evan, and it was clear to me that there was no way I could return to the firm and practice at the level that I was practicing at. After Ellis, I stopped all travel, unless I could do it in a day. And after Evan, I said I really need to transition to something else. So I did what any woman with a toddler and a newborn would do. I went back to school. I went to Columbia full-time program. Listen, it was brilliant when it came to me at 2 a.m. Brilliant. I got busy courting the professors and all that stuff. And then I enrolled and said, what was I thinking? You know, last time I was in graduate school, I was single, I was childless, I was free. And that was not my experience this go around, but I'm glad I did it. Why did I do it? I knew that I wanted to go into philanthropy. I had identified philanthropy as a nice way to use all the skills I had garnered practicing corporate restructuring, right? Applying them, basically applying Wall Street tactics to Main Street problems. But in New York, the field is highly professionalized. So if you meet someone who works for a foundation in New York, they probably have a master's, if not a PhD, in the area in which they're providing grant making. And even those former attorneys who are now running foundations in New York, they took a 10 or 15 year hiatus to make their way to get there. So I thought going back to school was a nice way to shortcut that. And it was to an extent. While I was there, I started thinking a bit more formally about what lessons from corporate restructuring would I want to apply to Main Street problems. And I continue to think of my work in this way, especially since I work for a corporate foundation as opposed to a straight up private foundation with the only concern being allocating its funds to social impact. So I made a switch from having this, very strong ethical obligation to my client. Failing to meet that obligation, of course, could result in me losing my license, to shifting towards having a very strong fiduciary obligation to the funds that I'm allocating in my role as a philanthropist. Going from maximizing return and value to the client, again, trying to locate that fulcrum debt and wrest control of the company for management, to maximizing return to communities. Going from identifying the common interests among the members of that company's capital structure to what are the common interests in community. And it is in this point that I think that I distinguish myself as a philanthropist. I really do believe in the power of collective funder activity. We'll talk about that in a few slides from now. But funders acting individually, no matter if your endowment is a couple of $100 million or a few billion, no single foundation, no single funder can address the social need alone, right? Even if every philanthropy in this nation, and we are in the trillions in terms of assets under control, even if we opened those coffers and paid it all out today, it wouldn't solve problems, right? On a permanent basis. You need ongoing commitment, ongoing investment, and then you need to continue to widen that circle of participants in order to solve complex social issues. And it is in that space, and I credit it to my prior experience as a corporate restructuring attorney, that I think that I really shine as a philanthropist. And then the other things are quite similar, relying on data and being a strong advocate for the issues that the foundation works on. So my first stop, as Heather mentioned, working across the philanthropic sector in New York City after I graduated. I worked on a number of issues with a number of different foundations, which was fantastic. It corroborated my two things. One, it was good that I went back to school. But two, it also corroborated the thought that I had around the power of funder collectives. All of these things were efforts that were driven by multiple foundations. They may have differed philosophically, ideologically, but coming together with their different perspectives and viewpoints to solve a problem for New York City in particular, and in some instances for the nation or in international markets as well. And then in 2020, I came to principal. Now, I've seen a lot of companies, and I know that here in Des Moines and in this region, people talk about how unique Principal is. I will tell you, Principal is truly a unique entity in the way that it treats its employees, in the way that management goes about solving problems that corporate management groups all over the country need to resolve, and most importantly, in the way it thinks about its home. And its home is definitively Des Moines, definitively Iowa. And no matter the changes that have undergone in the company, right? So going from being a small town entity to a Fortune 500 entity with operations all over the globe, our heart, our minds, our spirit are still right here in Des Moines. That was made very clear to me upon my arrival. It remains clear to me today. and calling Des Moines my home, I can understand why. So having positive social impact is at the core of what we do at Principal. What I did when I arrived was ask how, right? How do we want to have that impact? So Principal Foundation's been around for almost 40 years. During that time, it has done fantastic things in Des Moines and in this region. But as I mentioned, it is a Fortune 500 company with global operations, and the same expectations that folks, pardon my voice, I'm getting over that nasty bug that people have been talking about, so I might get a little creaky. But all the communities where we operate have the same expectations, that we are a great corporate neighbor, that we are a participant in that community's activities, and that we share our resources in some way, whether that be time or treasure. How do we do that? The pie isn't necessarily getting any bigger, and we know that the social issues aren't getting any easier to address, right? If anything, they're becoming more complicated. So we took a step back, we being myself and the members of the foundation's board, and said, you know, what do we know to be true, and how can we take this information to formulate a strategy that allows the foundation to be a strategic asset for the corporate brand and to be a good corporate neighbor in all of the places where we operate. So we know that 100% of Principal's leadership understands that it is a publicly traded company and the market has expectations. Period, point blank, full stop, right? That's my old world. I'm very used to that space. The second thing we know is that Principal has 62 million clients in 80 countries. And again, each one of those clients, pardon me, in each one of those countries is expecting Principal to show up in some way. And then last, at a meta scale, we know that 90% of the population, and this is true whether we're looking at consumers in the US, consumers, employees, investors in the US, or if we're looking at them across the world, they're all expecting good, positive, proactive corporate social impact and social activity. How can we resolve or coalesce around a shared thought on how we bring that to life? So what we did is created a 3-pillar strategy where thematically, right, we're aligned to what Principal tells the market it is interested in doing. Thank you, Kitty. Thanks, Kevin. Thank you. I appreciate that. So thematically, we have some consistency, right? Principal's purpose for being is to give people a reason to feel secure, right? Throughout their life and into retirement, and hopefully we have something for them to pass on to the next generation as well. That's a great mission, a great vision for a foundation to have. But rather than focus on the population that is ready to be a Principal client, we focus on the population that is moving towards that possibility. So what we do is fund the path, right? We fund the journey from maybe needing help with meeting essential needs, giving folks enough positive touch points with that Principal brand that when they get to the point where they can make a brand choice, they consider Principal, and hopefully they choose Principal. The second pillar is geographic. As I mentioned, we have clients all over the globe. We have to touch all those spots. We can't be in 80 countries all the time, always on, but we can hit some of them. So we have a foundation portfolio that has gone from 95% invested in the Des Moines market in particular to 69% invested in those other markets. Now, what you may hear in that is a loss for Des Moines. What I ask you to do is hold that judgment and think about how we've changed the way we invest in Des Moines. So prior to 2021, we gave a lot of small grants, usually about $5,000 to $10,000 each. Now what we do is give transformative grants. We will fund endowments or capital campaigns in ways that we hadn't before. In our past grant cycle, we funded several, whereas in the past, maybe we would have funded one. And the beautiful thing about structuring a gift that way in your hometown is that they're gifts that keep giving. They're also gifts that tend to be sticky, they attract other funders. And when you have programs like the Icon Water Trails or giving to the zoo, what you do is you set Des Moines up, you set that entity up to attract grants that they may not have been able to before, whether they be from federal sources or from other entities that are attracted to civic anchor institutions, and they may not have been on their radar before. And then the third pillar is sentiment, and that's really our employees, right? During my first 90 days, I did a listening tour, and I was shocked by the number of employees who didn't know that Principal Foundation existed. Some of those employees have been there for decades and never knew. And that's problematic, because if you believe, as I do, and I believe that all of the members of the executive team and the board now believe, that the foundation is a strategic asset for building the brand, for creating affinity for the brand, your employees need to know about it. The other thing is that if you take a step back and think about the not-for-profit sector, specifically in the United States, but this is true around the globe, what do you think the engine for that sector is? We know they need money, but what's the other input, if not the most important input? It's the volunteers. And guess who warehouses those? Companies. And they have a unique ability to mobilize them in ways, yes, churches can do that, other civic organizations, Rotary Club, but at mass, at scale, and with additional resources behind it, that is definitely the wheelhouse of corporations. So it is exceedingly important that at Principal, we make sure that employees understand where we give, why we give, that we open up our ability to have employees choose where they give. So in 22, we made some rather drastic changes to our employee volunteerism and match giving programs to drive that sentiment. We changed the way we match. Before, all matches went to one entity. Now they go to wherever, no matter where the employee gave, the match only went to one entity, right? What do you think that did to match incentivizing people to give and report it? Drove it way down, right? Now we have an open system. The match goes to wherever the employee has given. The other thing it's done is it has increased exponentially the number of entities supported by Principal Foundation dollars, right? I'll give you a sense of scale. We went from about 300 to 4,500, which is insane, right? Another thing we did with that program is we expanded the way employees are able to earn awards to give, because the truth is, not every employee has the extra treasure to donate, but they do have time